Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight for tonight's Tuesday Talks webinar. My name is Susan Brown, and I am the Associate Director of Parent and Family Programs. It is our pleasure to be hosting a webinar on tonight's topic, Fall 2019 Housing Selection Process. Tonight, you'll be hearing from Housing and Residential Life. Our presenter is Bea Van Den Heuvel. She is the Database and Operations Manager for Housing Services. During tonight's talk, you are invited to type questions into the Q&A pod, which is on the right side of your screen. Questions will be answered following the presentation. We ask that you do please refrain from posting personal questions pertaining to your student. So we're going to get started now. I want to welcome Bea. Thank you so much for taking time to come out tonight and, believe it or not, talk about the housing process selection for the year 2019.
Yeah, crazy. Thank you so much, Susan. I'm happy to be here, and welcome to all of you who are joining us this evening. As Susan said, I'm going to talk about the selection process for fall 2019 over the course of this webinar. Okay, so the things that we're going to cover tonight are the Housing Online Portal, eligibility criteria to see who's eligible for housing and who may not receive it right away, some important dates and events, the different types of housing options that we have available, our new public-private partnership called LightView, the selection and placement process itself, some tips and tricks to succeed, and then I'll take your questions at the end. Okay, so let's get started. Almost everything for this process is online, and it's found in the Housing Online Portal. Students have access to this through Northeastern. They can use the search bar to find it, or they can navigate to the Housing, Dining, and Campus Services section and then click on Housing Online. We also highly recommend that they favorite us. That way they can reach us very quickly for future use. So this is where they'll find all their information about their application, select their housing, view their roommates, and lots of other things. Before I jump into the full process, I did want to take this time to discuss the differences between being required, guaranteed, and not guaranteed housing. All of our traditional first and second year students are required to live in university housing. So no matter what, they're a part of our process and living with us. Then the majority of our upper class students are guaranteed housing, meaning that if they adhere to the application deadlines and the deposit deadlines, they're guaranteed a space and a selection number. The students who are not guaranteed housing will receive either a selection number or a waitlist number. So what we recommend is that anyone who's interested in housing should apply for housing. And so that leads us into one of our more important slides, which are the important dates and events. So our applications for the fall, spring, summer 2019 will become available on December 13th. So it's coming up very quickly, even though it's already more than a year away. These applications apply to all of our students, whether they're here, abroad, on a leave, on co-op, or just somewhere else. We'll send a lot of email reminders, and we'll send one on December 13th to our students and families, and that's going to notify them that their applications are live. The 4 terms that students can apply for are Fall 2019, Spring 2020, Summer 1, which is called the new term for our current first-year students, and Summer 2. It is very important, I'm going to stress this a lot in the next few minutes, that your student applies for any and all terms that they think they might be interested in. This is especially important for the fall and spring terms, as in the past we've actually reached capacity for those terms in the February month. We tend to have a little bit more flexibility in the summer, but that fall and spring it's really competitive, and so we definitely recommend applying even if you're not sure if you need housing. Please encourage your student to apply for all those terms, even if they're thinking of doing a study abroad or a co-op outside the Boston area. We have a really flexible cancellation policy for those students who cancel for reasons such as out of the area co-ops or study abroad opportunities. Again, it's always safer to apply than it is and then cancel by our posted deadlines than it is to look for housing at the last minute. Please encourage them to apply. And the deadline for this is January 18th. This is an extremely important deadline, and it's a very hard deadline. So after the 18th, we're not going to be accepting any more applications, and the applications will be immediately posted to the wait list. We'll send lots of reminder emails along the way, but please make sure that you check with your student and that they apply for all these terms by this date. After we receive all of our applications, we will review the number of applicants and determine which students receive a selection number and which students will receive a waitlist number. Then on February 1st, your students will receive those selection and waitlist numbers. For those who are on the wait list, that also gives them plenty of time to start securing off-campus housing or perhaps look into our Lakeview partnership, and which I'll talk about in a few minutes. So for those who receive a selection number, that number is actually very randomly generated, although it is based on their class year. So the older a student is, the more seniority they have in the process. The upper class students who receive a selection number, so these are the students who are in their third year or above, will have to make a $200 deposit payment by February 1st. It's important to note that this is actually not a bill, it's a separate payment, and we'll provide instructions in the emails that we send to our students as well. Again, I'm going to repeat that. It will not show up on your billing statement, it will be a separate payment. For the second year students, you don't have to worry about it. Since their students are required to live in housing, we actually don't require a deposit, and we'll waive the deposit for them. So second year students who are required, don't worry about it. Upper class students, make sure you make those deposits in order to secure your housing. Then once we have everyone secured and they have their deposits either paid or waived, the placement process will begin. And that will start for our upper class students on February 20th and on March 12th after spring break for our rising second year students. If they don't participate in those two processes, they'll go through our third part of our process, which is the placement assistance with staff, lovingly known as the PAWS placement form process, and that will take place over the summer. Okay. So before we dive into specifically how selection works, I want to talk a little bit about our different apartments and options that we have available. There are two primary styles of housing for our rising second years and upper class students. They are apartment style and suite style. And to start, we'll look at the examples of some floor plans of some apartments. As you can see, we have a lot of different configurations and layouts. Your students will have access to copies of the floor plans once they receive their selection number, so they'll be able to look at everything that they're interested in on the floor plans themselves. There's much more than just the two I'm showing here. All of our apartments have at least one bathroom, at least one bedroom, and a kitchen, although we do have some studio-style rooms as well. Some of the apartments have a common living space, and while others do not. Our apartments come in 3 different rate classes, and they come in economy, standard, or enhanced. And this is a chart that shows the primary differences between those 3 rate options within the apartment style housing. They have an economy rate will always have an in-unit kitchen, while the standard rate will have a kitchen and a common living space. The enhanced option has a kitchen, that common living space. It's typically new or renovated. It's air conditioned, and it often has elevators. And so samples of those halls in the economy rate include Burstein or our leased properties. In the standard rate, we see the Willis Halls, 780 Columbus or 10 Coventry. And enhanced rates are the West Villages, East Village, some leased property called Douglas Park, as well as our Davenports. The other option that's available to our students are the semi-private suites, and they're actually in International Village. For those of you who have students living in East Village right now, in those suite style, it's very similar to International Village, but this is primarily for our second and upper class students. This is a meal plan required configuration. They are typically made up of 2 bedrooms attached to a bathroom, and a lot of these bedrooms are single bedrooms in International Village, which is a very highly coveted configuration for our students. They love those singles. One thing to note about the suites is that they don't have any kitchens or common spaces, but they do offer that privacy of that just 2 rooms attached to 1 bathroom. When it comes to selection, upper class and rising second year students will have both have access to apartment or suite style housing, so they'll have options to lots of different varieties between the suites and the apartments, and they'll both be able to choose from a variety of rates and apartment capacity configurations. We tend to see that rising second year students selecting groups of 4 to 6, so what we've done is reserved a lot of those rising second year students who, and they're required to live in housing, and we'll create more spaces that are typically suitable for those larger groups. On the other side, the upper class students have access to our leased properties, which offer students a style of living that's a little bit more like an independent living, where they can still access our resources such as residential life or our facilities. In leased properties, they typically, what they'll do is they pay for their cable internet, but we will provide credit as well. Additionally, upper class students will have more single rooms available, while our second year students will have more suite style living available to them. If your student doesn't want to participate in the selection process and they're a rising third year or above, we recommend that they take a look at Lightview. It's new housing on Columbus Avenue. It's available to our rising third year students and above. They are a public-private partnership with us, and so they are affiliated with Northeastern University, but we are not going to have them as a part of our selection process. So this building is actually going to be primarily filled with, if not completely filled with, Northeastern University students. They have lots of different configurations. The rates are very competitive, and they're accepting leases right now for September 2019. So if your student's interested in Lightview, they can go check out that as an option. And they have a welcome center they can go see and talk to someone, a staff member on Columbus Avenue. So talk a little bit more specifically about the group and general and pause placement forms, so that whole housing and selection placement process. So as I mentioned, there are 3 parts to this process: group, general, and pause. Each student will be assigned a time to select during the group and general selection. Additionally, they'll have access to the pause form right when selection starts. During group selection, the group must fill an apartment or a suite. So if an apartment has 4 vacancies, a group of 4 must fill every space in that apartment. As a tip, pro tip for the rising second-year student parents, we recommend forming groups of 4 when they're selecting housing, because a lot of the configurations that we have available to them will be in apartments that are in size 4. And a lot of our housing is selected during the group process, so we do recommend that students form groups, but there are a lot of options for students who do not want to form a group as well, including general selection. So if a student doesn't select their housing during group selection, they can participate in general selection. During this time, a student or a group of students can select bed spaces in apartments that have at least as many vacancies as the size of their group. So, for example, a single student could pick a space in an apartment or a suite with at least 2 vacancies. A significant amount of our students actually end up placed in housing through the pause placement form process. So pause is a routine part of our process, and it's because so many of our Northeastern students participate in study abroad or co-op opportunities outside of the Boston area. Because as those students pursue those opportunities, we anticipate a significant amount of cancellations throughout the summer, and we manage those spaces through the pause process. Students can fill out their preferences through this pause placement form, and they can do that right when selection starts, and then our staff will actually use that information in the form to find the best match. The more patience your student has with this process, the better we're able to make closest match as possible. And we've had a lot of success with this pause program because some of these really great spaces become available as students cancel to go on co-op or study abroad. Skipped one too much. So how do they prepare for this? So what we recommend is that they take advantage of many of the resources that we have available. And I'll go through a couple more slides about what we have to offer. So for example, starting on February 1st, they can actually practice their selection process and housing online. There's an actual tutorial that they can walk through, and it's just like selecting housing. We've had a student who has practiced so many times that he was able to book his housing in 8 seconds. So if anyone can beat that 8 seconds, please let us know. It was quick. Additionally, in addition to that practice tutorial, they can view the vacancies that's available to them and specifically to them that will be available during their selection time. So depending if they're interested in male spaces, female spaces, or all gender spaces, they're able to view those specific spaces and what's available. And that actually gets updated in real time. Additionally, as mentioned before, they'll be able to view the floor plans and really investigate exactly which spaces that they're interested in. This real-time view allows students to plan ahead of time, which is exciting for us as well as for them. When it comes time to their actual selection day, the student in the group who has the lowest number, which is the number closest to 1, if you're an upper class student, and the number that's closest to 5,000 if you're a rising second-year student, will log in during their time slot. If they've planned ahead by looking at the vacancies and practicing and then setting up their group ahead of time, this is actually going to be a pretty quick process. Again, matter of seconds. They'll log in, select a space, and that's it. So the spaces will fill up quickly, so we recommend that students have many backup plans in the place of the event that their top choices are no longer available. So to prepare in advance will play a huge role in the success of this process. Your students should do their research and develop a plan by exploring that real-time vacancy viewer and developing several backup process options. We recommend that you have at least 5 to 10 options and make a different variety of options as well. There's a lot of buildings out there, there's a lot to choose from. Look at all those floor plans that are available, see what might be interested in. Go beyond just the West Villages and the Davenports, see what else you have available. Selection number is going to guarantee them a space, so anyone receives that selection number will have a space in university housing, and they'll participate either in group, general, pause, but it doesn't guarantee that they'll receive their top preferences. So unfortunately, we don't have enough singles in West Village for every student, although we wish we could because they would be great. And like I said, a lot of students, they won't select a space during selection, and that's totally normal. They'll go through the pause process, and that has really good positive outcomes. In general, students should communicate their plans with their roommate groups. There should be no surprises when selection day occurs. We do a lot of information sessions, encourage students to come to them. This is particularly important for our rising second-year students who have never gone through this process, or our rising third-year students. Our rising third-year students, they're no longer required to live in university housing, so the stock that they're going to see on their selection day is actually going to be a lot different than what they used to see when they were picking for housing the previous year. These informations will be published and then advertised to the students, and we'll post them on social media and around the halls and things like that. Additionally, they can stop by Housing and Spear Commons to ask as many questions as they would like. We do offer information sessions at Housing, and you can actually do walk-in hours and come in and talk to us and have your laptop and actually do the practice tutorial with us. We would love to talk to every parent and every student who has questions about this process, because we truly believe that the more educated they are, the smoother it goes and the happier they are with the outcomes. So how can you help? To start, please be sure to sign up in the parent portal as soon as possible, like today or tomorrow, to receive our December 13th email about the selection and placement process. Additionally, if you'd like to receive reminders about deposit deadlines, please have your student opt in your email address to receive deposit reminders through Housing Online. So this is separate from the parent portal. It's something that they can do on Housing Online. If you opt in for that, we'll tell you all about our deposit deadlines whenever we have them. Speaking of deposits, when it comes to paying that deposit, we know that that might be something that you're responsible for, so check with your student. Who is paying the deposits? Be sure to pay a deposit for every term that your student might be interested in housing for. Speaking of more money-related things, we also recommend reviewing housing costs with your student. You'll want to agree with it on a price point before they select. Look at the different rate charts. They're available on our website. Check out what you're interested in, what your limits are, before they pick something that might be out of your limits. To also make sure that you're avoiding any cancellation fees or penalties by keeping our cancellation dates in mind. Additionally, you are also more than welcome to review our resources and our information that's on our website. And there's a lot of the information that I've covered tonight is on our website, but again, if you have questions, feel free to reach out. I'll teach you a little bit about our website, as some of the information can sometimes be hard to find, but you'll find a lot of it on the Housing Services tab. You can actually click on the link in this presentation, and you can go right to our website. You'll find information in that Housing Services tab about the application process and our deadlines. Additionally, you'll find information about our room rates or the selection process and how that all goes. While our website has a lot of information on it, you can also find information on our social media accounts, and we highly recommend that you follow us on those social media accounts, at least between now and April, to stay in touch and be notified of any upcoming processes or events. With that, I'm actually going to close with our contact information. So we are available through phone, website, email. Those are all of our social media accounts. On Mondays and Tuesdays, we're open until 7 p.m. And on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, we're open till 5 o'clock, and we're happy to take any of your questions then, and actually we'll take them now.
Thank you so much, Pia. That was very helpful. Excuse me. So now we're going to begin taking questions. So I know a few people came in late, and one of the questions we had was who is guaranteed housing and who is not guaranteed housing. If you don't mind just going over that again.
It is a little bit of a confusing line. So typically any student who was traditionally accepted into Northeastern University who started in fall 2014 is guaranteed housing. And if you have any specific questions about your student in particular, feel free to just send us an email and we're happy to look into that.
So in regards to the selection process, someone's asking us, is it like a race? How can they pick? There hundreds and hundreds of people on there at the same time. Can you talk a little bit about how that works and maybe like
yeah, definitely. So it is it's not a race, but it is kind of that staggered start. So every student will receive a time slot, and we do time slots of about 20 minutes. So that's when every student, they'll have about, depending on the time of day and the group that's selecting, there'll be groups anywhere from find about 20 people select per time slot. Those 25 people are selecting for either groups of 1 or groups of 6. So it does go quickly, but you'll find that the starts and the stops happen every 20 minutes, and then once they're in the process, it'll go quickly. And again, we recommend practicing. That's definite. But yeah, it does go quickly. I'm not going to lie about that, but it's not a race.
we do have some parents in here who their students will be entering in January 2019 that are coming from the NUN program. When can they expect to see some of their housing assignments?
So for students who are joining us in spring 2019, we expect to start releasing assignments next Thursday, so it's December 6th. And then we'll release assignments every Thursday after that. We'll go in waves. Not everyone will receive an assignment next Thursday, but we'll start sending those assignments out as we go. We, just like you, want those assignments done as fast as possible, and we hope to have everyone assigned by December, checking here, by December 21st. That's the goal.
So we had quite a few questions, actually, about our new residence hall that is going to be opening September 2019. One is, it's located on Columbus Ave. I'm not sure if you know the exact address, but it is right next to...
Yeah, it's right next to 716 Columbus. I don't know exactly, though, what the address is, but it's right near our the campus police.
So if a student applies to live there, do they have to do a lease for a year? I mean, is there a way they can sublet it? Can they do a 6 months? How does that work? Is it different than Northeastern's way?
So they do need to sign a year-long lease, but they are flexible for co-op reasons or study abroad, just like we are. So in that sense, it does mimic how our process goes. So once they secure their co-op, or whether it's outside of the Boston area, they have 7 days to cancel their housing, and they're able to be very flexible in that. But they do need to sign a year-long lease, and then they'll release based on co-op or study abroad plans.
Okay, so once the selection process takes place, is there a limited number of students? Is it 4 or 5? Can a group be 6? I mean,
yeah, so the number of students in a group, it can range up to groups of 8. We don't have a lot of apartments that have 8 spaces, but they can be anywhere. A group can be a group size of 1 to a group size of 8.
Okay. So this parent is asking, their second-year student has been on co-op during the spring semester. When does he apply for second-year student coming in? Or the third year. I think I might have said that wrong. The student is a second-year student now on co-op. When do they apply?
Yeah. So the application process will go live on December 13th, and we recommend that everyone applies between December 13th and January 18th. Whether they apply on January 18th or December 13th doesn't matter as long as they apply. That applies for anyone who's on co-op, if they're abroad, if they're on a medical leave or anything like that. Apply in the next few months for September 2019. If they're looking at spring housing 2020, again, apply in December till January 18th because we do fill up for spring housing very quickly.
So selection numbers are not go by deposited dates, right, or by the time you apply for housing?
No, the selection number is totally random based on your class year. So if you're in a senior status, you'll be a higher number, so you'll be closer to number 1, versus someone who's in their later years will have a lower number.
So if a student wanted to single room? How's that work, and what are the odds?
Yeah, so we do have single rooms, and there's a difference between a single capacity, so a capacity of one, and then a single bedroom within an apartment or a suite. So if you're looking at that single capacity, so just one person in their own, typically a studio apartment, we find those a lot in West Village E. Those are going to go a lot more towards the upper class students, and we'll reserve that for them in their process. Typically those do get selected by our seniors and our juniors, but you never know. Sometimes you can actually, a third-year student could get a single studio through the pause process as our seniors and juniors take on co-op and study abroad opportunities. As for single bedrooms, those are available too. You would be booking that with a group, because if an apartment has a double and a single, then you would be looking at an apartment for a group of 5, and you just pick who gets the single in that group.
You just spoke about pause again. Could you give a little more detail what that means again?
Yeah, definitely. PAUSE, so the Placement Assistance with Staff, it's our lovely acronym for PAUSE. It's a totally normal part of our process. What happens is, because of our Northeastern, and we have that great co-op and study abroad program, a lot of our students will cancel over the summertime as they secure those spaces. And so as all those students cancel, more bed spaces become available, and we take those bed spaces and we manage them through the pause process. And so we'll go in selection number order, and we'll pull up someone's pause form, and we'll say, hey, what are they looking for? Are they in a group? Are they an individual? Let's see what their top priorities are, and let's try to get them into those top priorities. We can find often that students actually are more likely to receive what they want through the pause process than sometimes during selection.
So do you have to deposit for fall and spring when you're applying?
Yes, definitely deposit for fall and spring. Last year, so for spring 2018, we actually hit capacity in February. So we were on a wait list starting in February. So we'll have to do those deposits by February 11th for fall and spring. Again, that's just for our upper class students. Our required students are not. We'll waive their deposit for them.
What about graduate students? If a student is in like the pharmacy program and they're going into their 6th-year graduate students?
Yeah, so the programs that come in, such as physical therapy or pharmacy, so they start as undergraduates and they're in this dedicated 6-year program, they can continue to apply for housing, and they'll actually continue to live in undergraduate housing with their peers. The graduate students, like traditional graduate students, they'll go through our graduate housing process, and that will start in March.
There are several questions asking about off-campus living, and I just want to let everyone that's in this webinar tonight know that on December 11th, we will have a representative from Living Off Campus, and they're going to be talking about different tips and tools to use and about some of the different real estate fears that come up on campus. So December 11th, save the date. We'll be talking about living off campus and leases and that type of thing. Someone's asking, if there's a group of 4 or 5 and one of them is an honors student, does that have any?
We do have honors, so we do have honors-specific housing. So for our rising second-year students, in the past, it could always change from year to year, but in the past, it's been West Village C was dedicated to the honors group. And we're actually going to likely experiment a little bit more this year with, we've heard feedback from different students saying that they're actually interested in different rates, so we might be playing around with different rate structures for honors students. But we'll have dedicated honors housing, and those are for honors groups. So that's groups of students who are made up of all honors students. And they'll have preference over in those spaces as long as every student in that group is an honors student. The upper class students also have honors housing, and that's in East Village apartments. And they will be able to select those East Village apartments. Again, every student in that group does need to be an honors student. We find, while there's a little bit fewer spaces for our upper class students, we find that demand for that is a little bit lower because students start to create mixed groups and groups of honors and non-honors students as we go along.
You talked about the importance of applying for fall, spring, and summer. Do they find out at the same time, or will they find out summer housing at a later date?
So if you apply for fall and spring, as long as your deposits are either waived or paid for, you'll right then and then know that you have housing. For summer, it's not very competitive at this time. So for our first-year students who are going to be second-year students, they'll participate in new term, and housing is actually required for our new term students, and they'll live in a cohort style, and we will waive the deposit for that as well. So as right when the student applies for new term housing, they are accepted into new term housing.
So is that for this year coming up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that application.
A lot of people are asking about that. When is that? When is that?
Yeah. So the application for new term or summer 1 and summer 2 will go live on December 13th. Again, we recommend applying for any term that you're interested in, but those terms are not as competitive. Sometimes summer 1 does get a little bit tight, but we've always, to this date, we've always had enough availability to secure housing for anyone who wants it for summer 1 and certainly for summer 2 as well.
Can you talk a little bit about how it works when, let's say there's a group of 4 living in an apartment for the fall, and then 2 of them are going out on co-op? What happens, in the spring 2019? Can they still have that same roommate come back in the summer? Can you talk a little bit about that process?
Yeah, so if someone goes, if you have a room and they're there in the fall, then 2 people leave in the spring, we evaluate those spaces on a case-by-case basis. Depending on where you live, you might be able to pull in, if you know other people who are coming in the spring, so someone who maybe they were in the co-op or study abroad in the fall, and they are coming back for the spring, you might be able to pull someone into those spaces. Not every space is eligible for that, but some of the spaces are. Otherwise, we do have a significant number of students who join us in the spring, such as our new students at the NUN program.
We have a couple parents. You mentioned the parent portal and how an email will be sent out. If you have a parent portal address on campus, you will get the reminder email parents, so that will be coming out. So.
Yes. The deposit email reminders are different, so make sure your student signs you up for that through their Housing Online portal.
You talked about this already too, because I know the coming class in January 2019, you said they should be expecting to hear.
They should hear from us starting next Thursday, or late next week. We're hoping for Thursday, but it might be late next week, about their information. Then we'll start to release assignments in phases. Some students will be pending assignment for a little bit of time, but we'll get them an assignment as soon as possible.
This is, we have a parent asking, our student will be in the 3Cs program for 2019 and will need housing for 2020. When would that process begin? That would probably be next year at this time, correct?
Yeah, so 3Cs, make sure you just talk to that program. They have specific housing requirements, so I would talk to that program. If you have, again, feel free to ask us questions through at housing.northeastern.edu.
If a student is interested in being an RA, what housing options are available to them, and how does that work?
So the RA process actually is live right now. So if your student wants to apply to be an RA, we recommend applying as soon as possible. We do have information on our website with deadlines for that process, but they can apply to become an RA. And then the timeline is actually similar to ours. So they'll go through the interview process in late January, and then they'll be notified if they're selected for the position in early to mid-February. So at that point in time, they'll know if they'll have the RA position or not, and that hopefully will be before they start to make any decisions about where they're living for the fall and about their group of friends that they want to live with. So they can decide, do I want to be an RA or do I want to live with the students in my group of friends? So they'll let them know in early or to mid-February, and then anyone who becomes and accepts that offer, we'll pull them out of the process, and you'll go through the residential life RA process. If you decide not to take that opportunity, then you'll go through the normal selection process.
So when you pay your deposit, does that then apply to the housing cost, the total of the housing cost?
Yes, yes. Yeah, the deposit applies to the total housing cost.
Okay. Someone's asking, how do you become an RA? I think you talked a little bit about how we're in that process right now.
We're in the process right now. So you would apply to be an RA. You'll have some recommendations. The RAs definitely read up on their website of what different responsibilities they have. They'll have different office hours, and they'll do programs and the responsibility for the safety and the security of the students. So that's a really big responsibility to undertake. They do get free housing and meal plan, but if you do the dollar for dollar calculation, it's a lot of hard work. So make sure you're interested, and then you go for apply. A lot of great leadership opportunities come out of that process.
Okay, thank you. Who is really not guaranteed housing? I know we said first and second year students. Maybe you can talk a little bit about what happens to third year students.
So the students who are not guaranteed housing are often the students that come in through some of our pipeline programs, such as the American Classroom Program, or our transfer students. So not every student is guaranteed housing, but they are 100% welcome to participate in our process. What we do is we evaluate the demand for housing, and if we have the ability, we offer as many students as possible a space, that selection number, on February 1st. So at that point, it's just truly random on who gets the selection number and who doesn't if you're not guaranteed housing. But the other part, too, is that you might be guaranteed. So if your student started in fall 2014, and they're guaranteed housing, and that deadline passes, so now it's January 19th and your student applies for housing, they will be put on the wait list. So while they were guaranteed housing, by not applying on time, they lost their guarantee. So make sure that they apply on time, because we only guarantee housing to those who apply and deposit on time.
If you don't mind me, if we go back to one of the slides where your housing information is, a lot of parents are asking where they can see some of the floor plans, where the deposit deadlines, that type of thing. So maybe you can just talk a little bit about reviewing your website.
Yeah.
We'll put it up on the screen. Oh, there it is right there. Okay.
So our website is northeastern.edu/housing. Your students will have access to the floor plans because they are secure information. We do place that behind the Housing Online portal, so they're not available to the public, but they are going to be available to your students starting in February. And that's when we release all that information. So there's lots of stuff on their Housing Online portal. They'll be able to apply for housing, look at the floor plans, look at the vacancy reports. All that information will be there.
So if the student's applying for fall and spring of the following year, do they stay in that same room?
Yeah, so if they secure housing for fall and spring, they get to stay, and their halls actually will be open over winter break, so they can come and go as they please, and they'll have continuous access. We call that a continual contract. Or continuous contract if you stay with us for multiple terms.
We have time for one or two more questions, so I'll just wait to see if any more questions come through. Someone's asking a question about Lakeview. If my student only needs 6 months before graduation, if they go and live there in the fall and then they're graduating, how does that work?
I would definitely talk to Lakeview about that and see if they have any exceptions to the graduations.
And a lot of the price costs are on your website, the different prices for the different, studios.
Yes, yeah, we have a big chart. I'd love to list them all here, but we have, looking at the chart right now, it's a lot. It's about at least 50 different rates and configurations, different types of buildings and single bedrooms, double bedrooms, triple bedrooms, studios, but it is all available under Housing Services, and then the rates button will get you there.
Where someone's asking, can they pay the deposit now? But
yeah. No, I wish. Thank you. That is a great idea. Unfortunately, no, you can't pay for that deposit now. That will go live on February 1st, but I appreciate your eagerness.
So if a student doesn't get their first selection room, what's your recommendation? Like, what would you encourage them to do?
So if they don't get their top choice, keep going down that list. So I would encourage those conversations with their roommate group or with the parents or themselves, and figure out what the compromises is. So maybe their most important thing is to live with their friends, and maybe that location ends up putting them in, maybe it was their 10th choice of a location, but they got their top choice of roommate groups. That's a great option for them. Or they might talk to each other and say, I would much rather live in this particular community or this particular zone, and I would love to live with you, but I care more about the location rather than the people. So they might say, you know what, during selection we have a group of 6, and if that doesn't work, you're going to go as a group of 2, and you're going to go as a group of 4. If that doesn't work, you'll go 2, 2, 2. So there's lots of different, when we're talking about looking into your different options and availabilities, it's more than just different bed spaces and different buildings. It's also about your different room configurations and different group sizes and who you actually want to live with. And if none of that works, then you can always say, you know what, I really don't like the options that are available to me. Go through that pause process. We do our best. This is a manual process to get you in what you're looking for, or at least get you some of your top choices.
So when students are applying, we're going to go back to the Summer 1 and Summer 2 questions. So if a student is living in International Village right now and then applies for housing for Summer 1 and 2, they are going to have to move probably, right?
Yeah, right now the location for new term has not been determined. So depending on where the location for new term housing is or where your summer one housing is, you'll end up having to move. Because not all the students stay on campus for the summer term, we don't operate all of our housing options over the summer, so a significant number of our students do move. However, we provide hampers and a move-in, move-out date, and they're able to stay until that specific date. Something that is important about this move to from process is that we recommend not or advise that you do not create travel plans during this time, because the last thing you want is for your student's move date to get changed and for your student to be away, and we'll be communicating all that information to your student through email.
So a question about, say there's a group of 4 and 1 or 2 students are in co-op and cannot be available, what happens then?
Yeah, it's actually what we recommend is that you just have that leader, so that best number, sign in on that selection time and go for it. We actually want you to only use one device. So if you have more than several devices logged in at once, it does bog down our systems. So just one device per team, or maximum 2, so one person looking at the vacancy report, another person actually doing the selecting. You can access this system from your mobile device. Additionally, we have a proxy form, so students could sign this proxy form, and then we will actually select for them. So if they've exhausted all their other options for selecting a space, we will do it for them as well based on their preferences.
Not to quote you on a price right now, but yeah, I don't want to put you on the spot here, but is there a significant difference between a single and a double?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. So in the enhanced structure, a single is $6,960 this semester, and a double bedroom is $6,070. So it's about $900 more for between a single and a double. And then that happens in different rate structures as well. So lots of different rate options. We do expect that the rates for next year will be posted later in the spring. That's a little bit outside of our control to actually when those get posted, but they'll be posted later in the spring, and you should expect that they'll go up by a few percentage points.
Okay. Well, we hope we got to as many questions as we possibly could tonight. If your question did not get answered or you would like more information, please feel free to email us at parents@northeastern.edu, and I'll be sure to forward that email on to our housing office. I do want to mention to please save the date for next December 11th from 7 to 8. We'll be doing a webinar on tips and tools for living off campus. I know many of you had questions about that. And shortly, you are going to be asked to complete a brief survey to provide feedback on tonight's session and also to share any future topics that you would like us to present on. We'd love to hear your feedback about that. Thea, thank you so much. I know
thank you.
It can be a very confusing process for the parents and they're still watching their students. And I do appreciate the time you took. And like I said, if parents have any questions, please feel free to email us, and we'll be more than happy to answer your questions. Thank you for joining us tonight, and we hope you have a great evening.
Thank you.